please, for the love of all things holy, remind me that when I read a lot of books, I have a lot of books I have to talk about. Hello everybody and welcome back to the channel. My name is Brianna and this is For Paws in a Book. I make bookish videos over here on my little corner of the internet. So if that's something that you're interested in, make sure that you hit the subscribe button down below. I read 24 books in the month of February and then also DNF'd one. So we have a lot to talk about. Most of these books I did talk about in vlogs. I do most of my reading for content at this point, and so there are a lot of books that I have already talked about. For those, I'm just going to kind of point you in the right direction. I'll give you a general kind of my thoughts and feelings about it, but we're not going into a lot of detail because otherwise we will be here for 2 hours. There's also going to be a couple of books here that I'm not going to be talking about because they're in a vlog that happens in March and I don't want to spoil that. So you'll get my thoughts next month. If you're new to my channel, I do like to talk about some stats. I will put timestamps in the description, so if you're not interested in all of the nerdy statistics like I am, that's fine. You can just like skip right to the books. But for those of you that are like me, that love all these fun stats, here we go. Like I said, read 24 books in the month of February. So I almost did like 28 and 28, or 29 technically, but I wasn't even trying. I couldn't even get through the intro before my camera decided, no, we're actually not going to work anymore. So battery has been changed. Everything is good now. Let's go back to talking about stats. 24 books plus 1 DNF. That's a lot of books. Here's the thing, when your mental health sucks, you end up reading a lot of books. I read a total of 6,940 pages. Which is a lot of pages. The other thing was I was reading like pretty decent books. I had a ton of 5-star reads. My average rating was like 3.7. I didn't have any 1 or 1.5 star reads. I had 2 2-star reads, 1 2.5 star read, 4 3-star reads, and 4 3.5 star reads, 8 4-star reads, 1 4.5 star read, and I had 4 5-star reads. So February was a good month in terms of like the quality of what I was reading. In terms of format, I had 17 novellas, I had 2 graphic novels and 2 manga, and then I read 3 novellas. 23 of the books I read for an adult audience and 1 I read for a YA audience. I think that some of them probably could be classified as new adult. I don't usually use that category, so my new adult titles are in my adult. And then in terms of genre, we were kind of all over the place this month. I had 3 contemporaries, 3 fantasy, 1 fantasy romance, 1 horror, 1 sci-fi, 4 thrillers, and the big one, 11 romances. I read a lot of romances this month. So those are my stats. Let's talk about my books. I had 2 2-stars. One of them I'm not going to be talking about because it's in my March vlog. First up, I gave You Had Your Chance, Lee Burrows by Piper Rain 2 stars. I talked about this in depth in my football romance vlog. This was the first one that I read for that. And this was just very, very, very bad. It's a second chance romance, and that's like my least favorite romance trope for sure, but this one just never was done well, and it never was like, we never talked about the egregious thing that happened when they were in college. It was just like, he really hurt me in college, but he's got a 6-pack ab. He's very hot, but like, ma'am, you work on a football team. All 53 of those men are hot. Anyways, this book made no sense. I didn't love it. It's gonna go. I gave 2.5 stars to Guarding Temptation by Talia Hibbert. This was the last book that I needed to read for Talia's backlist. Like, I've read everything she has written up to this point. And I'm really sad that I ended on such a low note. I talked about this one in my 72 Hours in the Reading Nook vlog. This was the first book that I read for that. It was kind of like a romantic suspense where the main character was being stalked by somebody else, and so the male main character felt like he had to protect her. And romantic suspense books generally just, they don't appeal to me. I don't like them that much. This was also a novella. It was like 100 pages, a little over 100 pages. And so we never got a chance to connect with our characters, which is one of Talia's strengths. And so if she doesn't have the page length to really dig deep and like develop those characters, they're very flat. And so that's a bummer that I ended on this, but like, she's still writing books, so it's fine. Moving on to my 3 stars, I had 4 of them, and I've talked about all of them in vlogs. So the first 2 were in the 72 Hours in the Reading Nook vlog. The first one up is Spy Family Volume 5. I gave 3 stars, but I'm going to talk about both Volume 4 and Volume 5 right now because that just makes more sense. Volume 4 was cute. It's probably my favorite one of all of the volumes so far. You know, our cute little girl, who is my favorite character, got a dog that's bigger than her. Have you met my dog that's bigger than some people? That I connected with this. I connected with this, okay? He's a big floof. I have a big floof. That was my favorite. And then we have volume 5, which is probably my least favorite of the volumes that I've read. So we had a little bit of a roller coaster. This one really felt like a filler episode. It didn't feel like we had a lot that was going on. It was very much like introducing the brother-in-law trope that happens in a lot of manga. So it's very typical for manga, but for me, it just felt like nothing was happening. I have been told that this series kind of drags in the middle, so I am going to definitely be continuing it, but yeah, volume 5 was not my favorite. The other one that I gave 3 stars during 72 Hours in the Reading Nook was Not My Type by Evie Mitchell. This book I really struggled with because it has really good representation, right? Our main character is in a wheelchair, and it talks a lot about accessibility in sex when you're disabled. And that's one of the things that I love about romances today is that you're seeing so much diversity in our main characters. You're seeing plus size representation, you're seeing disability, you're seeing different gender identities, like everything, no matter who you are, you can see yourself in a romance. And so I really appreciated this representation. But there were some serious issues that I had with this book. One, the smut felt like the author had never written smut before, but she writes a lot of romance. So I'm really sad about that because some of the covers in her books are gorgeous and I really want them, but I'm just afraid that I don't necessarily like her writing, which is totally a me thing. A lot of people really love these books. I also had some serious problems with the consent in this book. It was very questionable. They start out very much like friends. They're friends before they start doing friends with benefits, and he has been trained his entire life that he is not someone who can be a boyfriend. All of his exes have said you're not relationship material, and so because of that he's I don't want to have sex. I don't want to just be just have sex with you. I want this to be more, so we're not gonna have sex. And then she's like, okay, but when we have sex, da 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 da. And it just felt like she wasn't taking his needs and his emotions into consideration when discussing some of these things. So I struggled. 3 stars for that. Also in my football romance vlog, I gave 3 stars to The Red Zone by Amy Knight. This one had the potential to be a really good book. It had less football stuff and more it was just these two characters kind of getting to know each other and stuff like that. The dynamic here is that our male main character is the guardian for his much younger sister who is disabled, and then her the younger sister's special ed teacher. That's the dynamic here. And again, representation was done really, really well, and I really appreciated a lot that was going on in this book, specifically about teaching special ed. There's a lot of conversations about that, and so it makes me really mad when they add a unexpected pregnancy into the book. When you do that at the 70% mark and that kind of becomes the third act conflict, nothing that comes out of the man's mouth I trust. Okay, how can he say I love you for the first time right after she's I'm pregnant with your child? A baby does not fix a relationship. Ever in the history of the planet. Okay? Somewhere down the line, it's not gonna end up well. So I hate an unexpected pregnancy trope. It is by far my least favorite trope in a romance. I'm fine with them being in the epilogues. That's fine. Okay, that makes sense. But when it is the catalyst of the third act conflict or the thing that they use to try to fix the third act conflict, no thank you, absolutely not. Immediate pass. So 3 stars because I really liked the first 70% of the book, and then it was just you had to do that, didn't you? Lastly, I gave 3 stars to One by One by Ruth Ware. This is probably the last Ruth Ware book that I will ever read, because this was fine. This is a book that existed and I read it. This was one of the first books that I read in the month, so quite literally do not remember anything that happened. This is very much the epitome of a snowed-in thriller where people are getting killed off one by one. It's about this tech team that comes in for a retreat, and there's some conflict within the company. They're trying to have essentially a board meeting at this retreat, and then someone dies because a decision has to be made, and this person was the swing vote, and so then you have to try to figure out the entire time who the killer was. And honestly, you find it out very early, and it's more just a product of finding it out along seeing the characters find it out. It wasn't for me. And I was using this as my catalyst of would I read more Ruth Ware, because I have liked a couple of her books, but then I really haven't liked others, and this one pretty much solidified that I'm not going to read any more from her. Moving on to my 3.5 star reads. I'm going to be talking about 3 of them today. The first one is Ripe by Sarah Rose Etter. I talked about this one in my 72 Hours in the Reading Nook. This was a random pick that I had, and it is a literary fiction, a little bit dystopian, a little bit memoir almost. Like, it reads a little bit like a nonfiction memoir does, but obviously a fictional company, things like that. But it talks a lot about like being a cog in the wheel of capitalism and like the lower man on the totem pole, and like just having to like commit to a company and like working all hours of the day and night for this company for little to no actual reward. But the like memoir part that comes into it is it's done very non-linear. The book kind of talks about like it'll have this current conversation that's happening in the company or a current event, but then we kind of flash back and talk about like something that happened in her childhood. This is a book that like I don't know who to recommend to, but I had a good time with it. I don't know that everybody will, but I thoroughly enjoyed it and I think it was really, really well done. My next 3.5 stars came from the vlog where I read all of Brittany's favorite books in a video collab project called Can I Trust Brittany, where a bunch of us all read Brittany's favorite books and scared her on her birthday. It was fun. It was a great time. So I gave both If We Were Villains and None of This Is True 3.5 stars for very different reasons. Because I really liked the writing on this. I think the like Shakespearean aspect to it was really interesting, but I didn't care about the characters and I didn't actually care about the murder that was happening or the like flashbacks and stuff like that. But like the writing, very, very well done. And then this one had like a really cool podcast element to it. This is a book about like finding your birthday twin and then not like going haywire and like maybe don't meet your birthday twin because they might be psychotic. And like I said, the podcast element was really, really interesting. But beyond the podcast, it was a very basic domestic thriller. And I've come to find out that like those are just not the types of books that I enjoy anymore. So if you want to hear my in-depth thoughts, those will all be in the vlog. And then also If We Were Villains is going to have a spoilery vlog on my Patreon. This was actually our buddy read for February. I promise you guys it is coming. I just have to edit it and I haven't had time to yet. I'm so sorry, but it's coming, I promise. Let's talk about my 4-star reads. The first one actually doesn't have a vlog, I don't think. So that's Washed Eye Diaries. This was a graphic novel that I had on hold for Libby and it just kind of came through. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna read this really quickly. This is really sweet and cute and it talks a lot about like day-to-day life, and it's a very slice of life book, but with a lot of mental health representation, and like to the point where it's like, you know, taking a shower is a lot of steps when you are depressed, and it just like it was very refreshing to see. And this one is very much a new adult book where like these characters are like post-grad and they're trying to find their way in the world. I wish that the story would have had a little bit more cohesion. It was very much like individual stories, kind of like a graphic novel anthology. I would have liked to see more of the connections between the characters because they were all in the same world and you would like see them in the distance, but like then each chapter would focus on a different character. And I don't know, I just would have liked to see a little bit more from this and a little bit more just like connection. Okay, the rest of them I do have videos for. The first one was also in my video where I read Brittany's favorites, and that was Wendy Darling by A.C. Wise. This is a feminist sapphic retelling of Peter Pan. This is a feminist sapphic retelling of Peter Pan. I think retelling might be a little bit of a stretch. It's actually like second generation, so it's talking about Wendy's daughter that gets kidnapped by Peter, and then Wendy has to go back into Neverland and rescue her. This book feels like it wouldn't necessarily be my cup of tea. It's very historical based, and so because of that, like if it wasn't Peter Pan, I don't think I would be interested at all. But I love Peter Pan so much, and this is, you know, this was a really good look into like kind of continuing that original story. I'll definitely read the second book in the series, which I think they're actually like standalones, but the next one is Hooked, and I'm here for that. Then we have A Butcher and Blackbird by Brynne Weaver. I actually have an entire live show where we'll talk about this. This was the Not Your Mom's Boozy Book Club book that we chose for February, so there's an entire sprint and then a live show discussion of this book where we talk about it in great detail, and this is such a fun read. This is the epitome of like a boozy book club pick, because the whole idea of the book club like being like Not Your Mom's Boozy Book Club, you have those like suburban moms, right, that read the thrillers from Reese's Book Club and those kind of things. This was like off center, off kilter from that. So it worked out perfectly. This is a romance between two serial killers that are trying to out serial killer each other. They're not like trying to kill each other. They're trying to kill other people. And it's fun because he kind of is a golden retriever at the same time. She's a badass female character, but like also wants to be protected. And then he kind of wants to be like an alpha, but also is a sweet cinnamon roll. So the dynamics of this worked really, really well. The only thing I hated about this book was the smut. The first smut scene that happens, because this is a slow burn, so the first smut scene that happens is in his POV, and it kind of reverts back to this like alpha a-hole type thing. And I don't know, like we did so much for feminism leading up to this book, leading up to that point in the book, that like when you see the first smut from his perspective, it kind of gave me the ick. But 4 stars, I still very much enjoyed it. If you want to hear all my thoughts, I'll have the live show linked. Then of course we had the Battle of the Icebreaker, where I had to see which side of the team I landed on. Did I love this book or did I hate this book? If you want to know, well, we're in the 4-star range, so obviously you know I liked the book. This was just a good time. We were here for a good time. We weren't here for like excellent literary critiquing, you know. We weren't doing that, okay? This was just a fun new adult college romance, right? Where college age kids do real dumb college things. And it felt like a CW show. This is kind of a rivals to lovers story where the hockey team and the skating team at a college have to work on the same rink because one of their rinks was sabotaged, and so the like freezing device mechanism is not working, so they have to work out on the same rink. And so there's back and forth, there's some like spatting back and forth, right? But overall, it was just a really good book. But overall, these characters were just a lot of fun to be with. She has severe anxiety, and I think the rep was done fantastic, and I very much related to her. Listen, anxiety comes off as bitchy sometimes, and that's the hill I'm gonna die on. She was an anxious little bean who puts everything in her calendar, right? She schedules time for sex, which, like, you know, you do you. You gotta do it sometimes. Like I said, I have an entire vlog where I talk about this book in depth. Like, I very rarely do one book vlogs. They don't do fantastic on my channel, but I had to for this one. So if you want my in-depth thoughts, they're up there. All right, gonna breeze past the last 3 here because I read them all during 72 hours in the Reading Nook. So we have Bonded by Thorns by Elizabeth Helen. This is the first book in a series of Fae Beauty and the Beast retelling, but make it poly. Like the Beast is actually for Fae princes. It was a really, really good time. I had a lot of fun with it. It's very much a direct Beauty and the Beast retelling, but you know, with more smut. Then we had Quarter to Midnight by Darcy Coates. This is a collection of short stories that I really, really enjoyed, and there were some that were just like, oh my god, it's so creepy. Like the mannequin one, that there's like the Weeping Angels in Doctor Who. That's this. I just wish there would have been a little bit more cohesiveness in this story. Like there's a lot of different topics that are discussed, and she's written so much horror that I think at this point, like we can like have a collection of like all haunted house stories. The lighting and placement may have changed, but I'm refilming this part of it because my camera decided it wasn't going to save the last 15 minutes or so of filming. So I went to go import it, and it's like not even a movie file. So we're just gonna redo the last part of this video. So we left off by saying that I really like this book, but I wish it had a little bit more cohesiveness. There was a lot of like random stories in this, but if you're a Darcy lover, you're still going to really like this. It didn't make a lot of sense. We had some mannequin stories, we had some ghost stories, we had some haunted house stories, and we had like a space story, and it didn't mesh quite as well as I would have liked, but it's still great Darcy. Then I also gave it 4 stars to If You'll Have Me by Uni. This is a really cute new adult college age graphic novel with 2 queer girls trying to figure themselves out, trying to figure out their life. The art style is so pretty. Like it's got these like pretty pinks and purples and stuff. Oh, I have a bookmark. And this is about one character who's like really quiet. She's mousy. She's, you know, really good at school. She does all of the notes. She's me in college, honestly. Never had a girlfriend. And then we have PG, who is kind of known as the player on campus. She has a lot of one-night stands. She doesn't like really attach herself to any one person, but somehow she ends up falling for Momo, and it's really cute. I just wish that there would have been a little bit more character development. There just a little bit more like reasoning behind like why she doesn't really do relationships, but all of a sudden Momo, who's never had a girlfriend before, she's head over heels for. Moving on to my 4.5 star read. I did talk about this one in my football romance book video, and that is The X Effect by Karla Sorensen. This is the second book in the Washington Wolves series about different football players and their romances. I read the first one last year, really liked it, and so I picked up this one during that romance vlog for the Super Bowl, and it was so good. This is messy, very messy. So we have our social media manager of the Washington Wolves, and she starts falling for the defensive end of the team, and like, you can't do that because you're not supposed to be dating the person that you know, the person on the team, right? But also, to make it even more messy, our social media manager used to be engaged to our defensive end's brother.
So messy.
Done really well. The smut was good. This was a good time. And now let's talk about our 5-star reads. I had 4 5-star reads, which is great. The first one was a reread, and that was A Dowry of Blood by S.T. Gibson. This is the story of Dracula's bride from the perspective of the bride. And it's really cool because it's done in like these epistolary letters, like written to Dracula after shit starts going down. It's such a good story. I annotated it and tabbed it. It was a good time. Highly recommend this book. If you're a fantasy lover, if you're a horror lover, like, this is so good. And I cannot wait to read An Education in Malice by her this month. That's our March Boozy Book Club book. They're not sequels, but kind of in the same world. I also gave 5 stars to Hoard by Django Wexler. This is a little novella that you got if you signed up for his newsletter. And so I read this during 72 hours in the reading nook, and this is how I closed out my reading weekend. So it was good to go out on a high note. This is essentially a D&D quest. That's what this book is. It's a story about a group of travelers that have to go kill a dragon. And then when they get there, they realize that the dragon has been hoarding all of the gold and you know, fine jewels and all this stuff. So they have to take all the stuff and take it back. And as they're going back, they have to hide from thieves and bankers and robbers and like try to act like they don't have a shit ton of money. And it's a good time. It's kind of quirky. It's kind of crazy. I'll read anything that Django writes at this point. He's never steered me wrong. I also gave 5 stars to Midnight Ruin by Katee Robert. This is the newest book in the Dark Olympus series. And it might be my favorite. I don't know if it's my favorite. I don't know. Like, I can't tell you which one is my favorite. I can tell you the ones that like aren't my favorite, but this one is up there in the ones that might be my favorite. This is another throuple, and I love her poly books. They're so good. And this one is like no different. There are some interesting kinks and like topics that are discovered in this book, and it's done in such a tasteful way. It's not something that like I would be interested in personally, like, but in a book, it worked so well. There's a lot of like submissive dominant play, especially like you know, the like, you know, crawl to me type of thing. Not like my cup of tea personally, but it was so well explained in a way that still like made it really sexy. I explained this much better the first time that I was filming this, so I'm sorry that you didn't get that one. Katee Robert can make anything sexy, and she makes consent so sexy, and not a lot of authors can do that, but she is definitely one of the good ones when it comes to that. But she's definitely one of the experts when it comes to that, and this was so well done in a way of like our character is like, he feels guilty about like a lot of things that he's done in his life, and so because of that he like feels like he deserves to be this submissive and like be this like one that gets punished. And our other characters in the throuple have like talked about like how we're not doing this like to punish you, like we're only doing this like if you like it, if you like consent to it, like all of this stuff. And it was just like in the aftercare that they talk about afterwards. Chef's kiss. Katee Robert can do no wrong. We're also exploring a much bigger macro plot among this series. At this point, you can't just jump in and read these out of order anymore, and I kind of love that. Like, we're actually getting this like full political story involved with the romance. And my favorite book of the month by far, like will be on my best books of the year, is At First Bite by Olivia Dade. This is a book that I picked up so randomly because I watched Shay's vlog, and I was just, yep, I'm gonna read this today. And I read it in like a day and a half, and it was such a good time. And like, you know, a hard time. This book has so much representation, mental health representation, plus size representation. Like this is me in a book. not like the story, but just the character. There's a lot of depression representation, which is something that you don't see very often, and this book had me bawling at my desk at work. So like, go into it with a good headspace for sure. But this is about a woman who buys the house in between her fiance's house and her fiance's brother. She was buying it as a wedding present to her fiance, and then the wedding gets broken up. In fact, the fiance's brother is the one that's like, you shouldn't marry her. And then some time goes by and she starts falling for the brother. He starts falling for her. It's a big messy time. Apparently, I like ex-fiance's brother's romances. That's the theme of this month's wrap up. The romance itself, especially like the story, was not like necessarily my favorite in like all of the romance that I have read, but just the story of Athena and like trying to pick herself up and like in the throes of depression. There's a scene in here where he like helps her shower in not a sexy way, not like it does not become a smutty scene. It becomes like, it's just a care scene, and it was so well done. Olivia Dade will forever be one of my favorite romance authors, and I cannot recommend this book enough, but be in a good headspace. Those are the books that I read in the month of February. It's a lot of books. Let me know down in the comments below a book that you really loved in February, and if you're not feeling chatty, do a strawberry emoji, because there's strawberries on this. So that's all I have for you today. If you're new here and you have not yet subscribed, there's a little button that you can do so down below the video. If you'd like to hang out with me more, the links to my Instagram, Goodreads, Twitter, and my Patreon are linked in the description below. Thank you for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye!